for watching. Please like and subscribe to help us spread Teepa's positive approach message around the world. And don't forget to click the bell to get notified when new videos are posted.
Oh, and so we have lots of puzzles tonight, lots of questions. So we know we have at least 8 solid questions. So I've asked Carrie to sort of keep us on track with moving things along. And Rachel is the keeper of the questions. So she's gathered the questions that have come in to ask Teepa anything. So Rachel, how about kicking us off?
Okay, yes, we have lots of questions tonight. So our first one, I wondered, Cindy, if you wanted to go first tonight. Her husband lives in memory care, and he's going to be admitted to his second time of inpatient Jerry psych. But there has been a mutual agreement between her and the facility that he will not be coming back there. So she's looking into other places for him to be, and is wondering especially about the COVID precautions, because the last one has been very, very, very strict.
Yeah. So early question, Cindy, is he vaccinated?
He is vaccinated. He has not had a booster, but he has had his 2 vaccinations.
Vaccinations. Okay. And are you vaccinated?
Yes.
Okay. So what we know is that although it's not super protective, you are certainly in a category of a fairly, and you've been staying pretty much, I'm thinking, on your own or in a similar pod. You haven't been doing a lot of wild partying or going lots of different places.
Correct.
Yeah. And he hasn't either.
No.
No.
Well, except for now he's in his 2nd psych unit. That's.
Yeah. So the psych unit discharges, where we know that happens, unfortunately, way too regularly when care routines are disrupted, and how people need support and care, and how they're trying to communicate what's working for them and what's not working for them is not well received in a community. And the community staff are not sure how to help. Typically, then psych admissions tend to be pretty frequent. And it's not necessarily all that helpful, because what we add is another new environment with new carers, with new routines. And then we go through that, and we start adding often new meds, or we change meds, and they stay just long enough that, oh, I think it's going to be good. And then we go to the new place and things proceed to be different yet again.
Right.
So
yeah, unfortunately, well, he has Lewy body, but he has never really been put on what he should be put on with Lewy body. I've really struggled with doctors, but that's another
whole nother issue.
Yes.
Yeah. So Lewy body is probably, Lewy and FTD are some of the most common psychiatric discharge to psych for what they determine are behavioral problems. But typically what end up being very common symptoms for Lewy body, but if you don't know how to manage those well, it ends up being a behavioral disturbance, because how people respond to someone who's really struggling with the reality of where they are, how things are going, time of day, situation, it's just not matching. And that makes it really difficult. So the new location, how aware of you as a primary person to him is he?
Before he went into a facility, there were lots of times he did not know who I was. Okay. Since I have been visiting him at memory care, he knows who I am.
Your relationship to you, or that he knows your name, he knows he loves you and he trusts you, or what kind of knowing you is
he knows my name, he loves me, he trusts me.
Okay, so that's an important relationship for him.
Yes.
Yeah. So in the new possible locations, how important is it going to be for him to have an anchor, do you think?
I think very important. Where he is he was, they have not Well, I was getting able to see him, but with the new Delta variant, they've stopped that and we're doing window visits, talking on the phone. They were then going to start in-person visits in a specialized room, supervised for 15 minutes. They also would not let him leave the facility for medical care. I have gone to visit 2 other facilities. 2 of them have visiting where you can pretty much come and go. You can take them out. They do, check your temperature.
Right.
You're supposed to wear your mask.
Right.
He can go out for medical care. I mean, he can go out to dinner should I choose to do that. One facility has a little more restricted visiting.
Mm-hmm. So, given his need for this connection, and not having that connection tends to, for people with Lewy body, that change in ability to have connections with people tends to have significant symptom escalation frequently. And so one of the things that having a regular pattern is, Lewy itself is so irregular that having regularity is one of the things that helps. And so by having that visitation, probably going out a lot isn't something you'd want to do anyway, because it's hard for him to be out. Possibly being together somewhere, but even car rides can be sort of a lot for someone who's just been in one facility, into another facility, now to a third facility. So typically it sounds as though a location that will allow you to be with him a good bit. Is he a real social person, or is he more of an introvert?
I do. In his time that he's been in memory care, which he went there the end of January, I have not seen him interacting with any of the other residents.
Yeah.
Sometimes he participates in activities, I know, but I don't really see him interacting with people. He interacts with the staff, but not so much other residents.
Okay. So is that sort of consistent with how he's been earlier in his life? He wasn't that big a socializer. He worked with people and he was fine with people. Yeah. He just wouldn't seek them out that much.
He's a retired school teacher.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So, and he did have, in his mind, he's always working with kids.
Okay.
So he's always busy, working with kids.
So he doesn't have time to socialize a lot because he has stuff to do. And so that idea of being able to be in a space that isn't real busy is probably better for him than being in a place that's got a lot of frantic or really busy activity going on. So, the COVID thing, it is a little bit at this moment in time to be thinking about going out to dinner as, going out and then coming back, because as we know, the more we widen that circle, the higher the risk that somebody's going to come back with something and share it. And the latest data about people living with dementia is their risk of getting COVID is higher by about anywhere from 50 to 70% than the general population. Now, that doesn't mean they'll get a severe case. It just means they're more vulnerable to getting a COVID infection. And the fact that he's vaccinated is good, but it is higher. I mean, that's sort of the evidence coming out. Is there a higher risk group? People living with dementia. So wanting to be somewhat protective, being too flexible and just whoever can come and do whatever, that might be a little extreme. So somewhere in that middle range is probably the safest thing for him. And then being with you as much as your tolerance will be, because, some of that is, it will wear you out too. Because when it comes to separating, then how is the coming back apart after you've been together?
He's usually okay with that. He's been okay with it. He's
Yeah.
very confused. I'm hoping this psych hospitalization right now, they're going to get some meds adjusted and that he comes out in a little bit better state.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully a lot of the adjustment is taking some things away that have gotten added on. And so, we're not trying to dose everything with let's add another, which unfortunately with Lewy body tends to result in very bad outcomes in short windows of time.
Right.
It's just not a good dementia to add things to. Classically, with most Lewy body situations, you're trying to pare it down to as little as possible because it just is tricky and it cycles so badly that it's really difficult to try to manage with medications, which is what way too many groups tend to do. So the other thing to think about with the location is how much do they rely on medication adjustments and how much do they really try to do working with the situation to try to minimize the use of medications. Because that's the tricky part with Lewy. As soon as you start thinking meds are the answer, you'll be on the other side of them within 3 to 5 days, almost. It's just...
and what, you never know until you're really there. They can always paint a pretty picture.
Yeah.
The 3 places that I have talked to are all very willing to have me managing his medicines or being in control of what's going to happen to them.
Okay. Well, that makes them all of equal value. So the ones that feel like they have maybe some management of this, how people are coming and going might be a best option, just given the risk of developing a COVID infection, even if it isn't a major one. It could just knock him off enough that makes the meds even funkier then, and his wakefulness or sleep more problematic. So, well, keep us posted.
Okay.
Thanks.
Right.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Well, it's great talking to you. Thanks for coming. And let us know for sure.
I will.
Yeah, good. All right. Thanks. And Rachel, what do we got?
Next up, we have Jeffrey, our friend Jeffrey. And a couple questions, but I think the main idea, and Jeffrey, you can always correct me if I'm wrong, is that they're going to be traveling due to people not really listening to what they should have been listening to. So they're going to have to do a pretty extensive travel, and he's going to have to take his wife. I think his housekeeper will be coming too. So it involves a long airplane flight. It involves a lot of details. So do you have some ideas of traveling and supporting someone that's living with dementia to where you can make it work?
Yeah, just wanted to clarify, Teepa, on this trip, the housekeeper is not coming with us. This is not a domestic trip.
Oh, no, it's an international. Yeah.
It's an international trip. It's actually 2 international trips because we have to transit the United States and go into a Caribbean country. And I cannot take the housekeeper with me. We're actually have to quarantine on site for 15 days. And given all the complications of whether we're actually going to make this trip at all, I am not willing to pre-place a nurse in the residence in our destination to join us for that 15-day quarantine, because I just don't know whether it's going to happen. So I'm going to be quarantined on my own, taking care of her on my own for 15 days. After the 15 days is up, I'll try to get local care if I can, but I don't know what's available. It's a very small island. And the alternative was, she comes, I hate talking to her when she's my present, but the alternative was putting her into a care home here and traveling alone. And I have chosen that is not the answer because of her language cognition. Her disease has progressed to where she's lost the cognition of the Spanish language and she can only communicate in English. And I'm the only one in her care circle who can communicate with her in English. And that's very important. And you're the one who's told me that I am her brain. And that is just so perceptive. And so I just have to go with her. But I just want to make sure that things are, I can be prepared for as much as possible. I mean, unfortunately, in the last 2 days, I guess we've called what I would call, I don't know, sudden onset urinary incontinence. I don't know how else to describe it. Because she was fine until 2 days ago. Yesterday she had 2 accidents. Today she had 5. She's never had an accident in a month.
Ooh, I would say you probably have a UTI brewing.
Well, which is why I'm I've asked her the question, do you have pain or when you did it? And she doesn't know, of course.
No. And
but
so
we're getting hopefully within the next 3 hours, a doctor's coming here to look into that. So, but the question was just, do you have any general advice for that? And my other question was really about preparing for the eventualities. I mean, it's very difficult because she's here now. She doesn't want to be away from me. But it's what I wrote is that, do I ask her preferences? I feel, and I've so far decided the answer is no. It's going to introduce an unpleasant topic that I should avoid. And I don't want to cause unnecessary distress in that, but her family and the people who I will rely on in case I'm not around, they want to know whether I've done that. And I'm just wondering, do you agree that I should not? Basically, just trust my own judgment.
Yeah, so those are some really good questions, Jeffrey, and concerns. So almost, I would say, given a sudden onset of urinary incontinence, rather than pain, most individuals living with dementia and people who are starting to have even significant cognitive anxiety about thinking and remembering and things like that. One of the early symptoms for many episodes of urinary problems is incontinence. And it's that phenomena of not quite being able to hold it all together to hold on to urine. And it's not pain. It's not painful. So if you ask, it doesn't actually sting or burn or anything like that. It's just you can't quite get your urine to stay where it's meant to stay. And so you'll find leaking. And it's not even when you're laughing or moving. It's just you can't quite hold on to the urine. And people are so flustered by it. They get really distressed.
Well, she did admit today to being upset and disappointed and frustrated with it.
And because you sort of, I mean, in those moments, more people I talk to, it's like, that you need to hold on to urine, but the more you try to hold on to it, the more it slips out and the more you can't get it to stay. And it's sort of really irritating because it's not like you let your bladder fill up so much. It wasn't even that. It's just that you can't talk your bladder into holding the sphincter into holding tight. And so it related to this whole really complicated phenomena that human beings have and with their urine, which is what has to relax, what has to tighten up, and what has to happen. And when you start to have inflammation, which is what an infection is inflammation in the area, you get that happening, and then the signals get crossed. And so it doesn't have to be a raging infection where you have white cell counts off the chart or anything like that.
No, that's true. I mean, I myself have had low-grade infections that have persisted for 6 months, and I never realized I had them.
Yeah, exactly. And so that sudden onset is sort of that signal. Unfortunately, what that also means, however, and the reason I'm harping on it a little bit, is her distress state is heightened. So her anxiety will be up, which means being in an unfamiliar place and having unfamiliar things going on and having a schedule that's not regular, and you being somewhat stressed, because there's no way you're not going to be stressed trying to deal with flights and travel and she has to go to the bathroom, but she doesn't want to go in the bathroom alone, and you're on the plane and it's a long enough flight that you can't just wait. How's she doing with wearing incontinence products these days?
I have not started her on anything. What she's on is a small a small, pad that do daily ones that for ladies. Now, the housekeeper suggested putting on a regular menstrual pad. I've never put her in adult diapers yet, although for the flight, I'm thinking I'm going to have to tell her, I'm sorry, you're going to have to wear a
Let's
diaper for the flight.
well, what I would say is let's do a pull-up. Let's do a ladies pull-up, a silhouette, one of those, you know, sort of it's a tailored garment and it pulls up on yourself, but it does absorb a fair amount of liquid.
Well, I'll have to see what's available in this country because I'm not
gotcha.
sure.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, Jeffrey. I forgot.
Maybe Amazon delivers for free to Colombia. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. So you've got that issue. So her anxiety is going to be heightened. So the question I would say is, what does she currently use for relaxation or sort of not being so stressed or distressed? What kind of medications are y'all using at this point? Anything?
Well, the only medication for her condition is Risperidone.
Risperidone. Yeah, Risperidone.
And she's on low dose, 0.5 milligram 3 times a day.
Okay.
And she's got a consultation with a nurse psychiatrist in just over a week from tomorrow. And I'm actually thinking of asking him to up the dose a bit, but because it originally was higher and this was lowered to this. And I'm thinking maybe we should trade it back up a bit. I don't know.
I mean, it's probably, you may want to think about that rather than, you know, talking to them, but for sure, rather than going with a cocktail that you don't know how, when you mix the ingredients together.
Well, I have disregard. We have been prescribed. She's been prescribed Memantine, and it didn't work. It just seemed to make her symptoms worse because she's pretty advanced stage. Then the neurologist wanted to give her the patches, rivastigmine or whatever. Yeah. And in consultation with her neuropsychiatrist said, no, that's not going to help either. So the only thing she's on is the Risperidone, the antipsychotic, and that seems to be the best.
Yeah, because she has a fair amount she gets anxious pretty easily. I mean, that was historic for her. I mean, when you're not around, I mean, the anxiety, the distress can get.
Well, yes, if I'm, well, I guess I don't know. You tell me that's the symptom of wanting to be around me 24/7 is what you say it is. So
yeah, it pretty much is for her. I mean, she's only comfortable when you're in her sight. If she cannot see you, her discomfort starts. So you've got a seat where you're on the aisle and she's next.
And remember though that back in April.
Yeah,
this was back in April.
She was okay.
I was gone for 2 weeks and she was okay.
Yeah, with that other person, with the aide that you had, the housekeeper that you had that she really likes.
Yes. So.
Yeah, that you won't have. Yeah. So I think you're making the best of a very challenging situation coming up. I do think you're going to want that backup medication to have it, because it is high risk, these kinds of things you're doing, these 2 flights, and you know that. Has she been wearing a mask at all?
Oh, all the time.
Okay.
The time. Every time we go out every day for a walk.
Okay.
And almost every day.
All right.
And fortunately, I live in a country where wearing a mask was never politicized. That's a good point.
Yeah. Yep.
And even though we're going out for a walk in the fresh air, we put on a mask just to go down the elevator and leave the building and cross the street. It actually helps because the road we have to cross is a pretty busy road, and wearing a mask helps you not breathe in the pollution of the trucks and cars, the fumes.
Okay.
And then we just go up and we go down into a very pleasant side on the other side of the road, and we have a walk all the way to a little park and walk back. So we generally get about, it's in terms of exercise, it's really the only exercise she gets every day, but it's about, I don't know, half an hour to an hour's walking time at an extraordinarily slow pace, but yes.
Okay, so in the airports, you are going to want to think about doing that similar kind of thing. And if she's having trouble walking, think about even in a wheelchair, doing that routine walking.
Well, I've always, even before I knew her condition, for the last probably 5 years, we've been traveling. We always ask for a wheelchair in the airport because if they change the gate at the last minute, she just can't make it that fast. So I said, it happened once. We went from one end of the airport to the other, and I said, "There's no way we're going to make this without a wheelchair." So we've always had a wheelchair.
Good. And then when you get to the quarantine, have you asked them whether it would be possible for you to have a space that you can go outside to walk around where you're quarantined?
The quarantine is our own residence in this
Okay.
island. It's her residence, and it does have a very small outside balcony. So the nice thing is, we'll be able to open the door, go outside, get some fresh air, and look at the
Okay.
ocean and see the water. And
Okay, so there is an outdoor view at least. I mean,
yes,
that's a plus.
but of
Okay.
course that place has the difficulty that. But I mean, I'm getting the bathroom remodeled to accommodate her,
Okay,
and unfortunately, the bedroom accommodations are up a long flight of stairs. I don't like having internal stairs because where we live now is everything is one floor. But we're going to try it. I mean,
Yeah.
she's been asking about it every
That's great.
day,
That's good.
every day, and she
So-
keeps asking me, "Who is the name? What is the name of the guy who's taking care of her place there?" And I keep having to tell her.
Okay, so she's
But,
really, so she's really committed. So one of the things that people talk about advanced directives, and advanced directives is what next, what if, when we go.
Right. Well, the only thing she ever did was, I am her healthcare proxy, but we
Okay.
never had this kind of a discussion that I'm talking about.
Okay, so one of the ways that I usually start is, so what are the three most important things that you want to make sure I always offer you? What do you always want? If anything were to happen, what would be really important things for you? Rather than what do you not want, or what happens if you get really sick? It's not, what do you want? If the three top things that I could do for you as somebody who was, your healthcare person, what would be the three top things you would want? So
You
what
tell
do
me,
you want?
I
Not,
mean, this is a question you're asking.
I would
You
ask
are
her.
asking me.
Yeah,
You're
and I would
asking
ask
me.
her. I would
So
ask
you're
her.
my health. Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
So
you
if
would ask
were
that. You
yeah,
would
I
ask.
her. I would say, what are the three top most important things I could do to make sure your life is worth living? What would be the three most important things to you? If we had to give up
Okay,
everything else, what would it be?
right. Without mentioning what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. Right. Okay, I got you.
That's right. Yeah. I just want a general idea, because you get that you're going to have to interpret what all this means at this point. She
Mhm.
can't give you a direct answer to these specific questions, but she could tell you what's the most important thing to her. What is most important? What is really important for me to try to offer and do?
Could you repeat that question just one more time so I can just sort of say how I direct it toward her? Because we're talking a person in a advanced stage. I always say on your gem scale, she's
Yeah.
emerald, ruby, even showing bits of pearl already. So
Yeah, she has those moments. Yeah, so she fluctuates. So when you have a good moment, I say, I'm acting as your healthcare power of attorney. And I want to know, what are the three most important things I could do for you? What do you want to make sure I do? What's most important? And give her some time. Because people do have opinions about what they care about. Comfort, or would you rather be more comfortable, or would you rather get pushed to be the best you can be? Would you
well, that
rather
was what I was sort of asking. Do I give her suggestions like you just started
this
there,
or that?
not?
Yeah. Is it more important? Would you rather be comfortable, or do you want to be pushed hard to see if we can get you to be better? What would you like? Because people can tell you what they'd rather. I mean,
Well, my guess right now would be the former rather than the latter, because I can't get her to do exercise to keep her strength up.
Exactly. And so this is where what you want the family to understand is, we did do these questions, and here's what she says. She wants to be comfortable. She's really don't want to. She really doesn't want to push hard to get better. So if it came to a question of, okay, well, we could put her in rehab, or we could get into comfort care, what do you think the right choice for her is then, given what we just talked about?
Mhm.
So what is comfort care? It's palliative care. What is palliative care? Don't do extraordinary means. So we don't need to get into all the nitty gritty to find out. I am now trying to make reasonable choices. And if her family wants that, and you want to just confirm that you're
No,
right.
I hear you, because that's just because obviously, if what the scenario I'm planning for occurs, I'm not going to be around, and it's their family is going to be making these decisions, and I want to make them aware as much as possible, because
what has she said?
I have extraordinarily specific instructions in terms of, because if I'm not around, who's going to pay the housekeeper? Who's going to pay the utility bills? We're in a different country, all this sort of stuff. It's all taken care of.
Oh my gosh, it's huge.
So,
and you've got the language barrier and all those phenomena going on. So, this work you've done and you are doing is pretty extreme. I mean, I don't think somebody not in a second language country would have a clue how complicated this stuff is. Trying to figure out the mechanics, it is not easy. And then trying to see to her comfort while you're doing it. And that's you're really almost in, Jeff, I want you to take a deep breath frequently and remind yourself, I'm doing the very best I know how. And pat yourself on your back, because honestly, you're taking on a task that most people would throw their hands up and go,
I just think I've started looking into institutions. I went and saw one the other day, and there's another one I want to see in case something happens. But I still think that it's best that no matter how hard it gets, that I keep her here with me. And it's basically because of what you said about who's her brain and the language. And I view that, it would just be enormously what's the word, upsetting, too much of a change to try to, I could move to North Carolina if I wanted to, but I just don't think that's the right thing.
No. Yeah, I don't know that it is either. So, hang in there, but keep us posted if you could.
Okay.
To let us know
Thank
how
you.
You guys did a remarkable job last time. I know it went a whole lot better than any of us could dream of. So I'm going to knock on wood and hope for the same. Cool. Thanks, Jeffrey. Thanks for coming back. Okay, Rachel, what do we got next?
Yeah, so we had a question from Jan here in the room that she is supporting her 97-year-old mom. And the hardest part of the day is from 6 p.m. to bedtime, which is about now. She said that she has sundowners and gets terribly bored by this hour. Her sight and her hearing is declining. So she's wondering what she can do to keep her occupied and help keep her calm.
Okay, so Beth, I'm going to let you sort of start this one for me, and I'm going to listen in, and then I'll jump in when you dig a little bit with Jan and sort of figure some things out.
Well, hey, Jan, it's Beth. How are you? Oh, good. So I'm wondering if you're able to look down at the bottom. Do you have the mute button that you're able to see on the lower left-hand side? You're so skilled.
You have me? Okay.
I've got you. Perfect. Oh, awesome. Look at this skill we've all developed in quarantine. So, Jan, it sounds like you've got some evening engagement is what I'm hearing. Is that accurate, or is it something else?
Well, what it is if all the days throughout the day and the evening could be like the morning, this would be so good. But unfortunately, it's as the day goes on, there's more and more anxious behavior, impatience, and I know that it's got to be boredom. My mom was an incredibly bright and politically active woman who was, put her life on the road for environmental causes. And now it's just down to nothing, it's, and I know
a woman with the purpose, it sounds like.
It really, and now she had one day of clarity about a month ago. And she said, I need to talk to you. And I said, okay. And she said, I need your help. And I said, well, how can I help you? She goes, I feel like I've lost my purpose. Ooh. And I need you to help me. And I said, I will. And of course, that was just that moment. And it came and it went. And I just don't know what to do for her.
So it sounds like that's where you got the idea that this is really about purpose for a woman who, as the day wears on and her body gets more tired from just living and doing and digesting and interacting and
well, she sits around all day. I mean, and does nothing.
Okay.
And I've tried to play cards with her. I've tried so many things, but her eyesight is poor. She has macular, and her hearing is terrible. And but she's got all of the aids that she needs, but her brain doesn't hear.
Okay.
Her brain is starting not to hear, not her ears.
Recognizing the difference between what she can hear and what she's comprehending.
Mm-hmm. But if you talk too fast, she can't understand anything. And the television is meaningless to her because it all runs together.
So much white noise.
I just am at a loss.
And then
I don't know what to do.
So tell me a little bit about your environment. When she looks like she feels engaged. I mean, I think you've got this really neat idea about the difference between what she sees as purpose and meaning versus what's just simply engaging with my world, like playing cards or doing things for leisure and fun. I'm curious, when you have those moments where you think, wow, she's doing something that she feels is purposeful. Tell me what that looks like.
Today we have a brand new, she has a great grandson. And so today he came and we put him in her arms and she fed him a bottle, and that was magic. I'm in the process. I want to get a little dog that can sit in her lap because she is in love with animals and she could sit there and pet, a cat or a dog forever. Also, Teepa, I was introduced to you by a friend last week, and I watched you on the internet, and I just am grateful. Just thank you. And you mentioned music, and it's a funny thing because I could play the role of Hello, Dolly, because that musical I play twice a week. The one with Barbara Streisand and Walter Matthau. And I play it twice a week because she can't remember she saw it. And she's got a smile on her face the whole time.
Yep.
And so those are the little things that I know now work.
Yeah. So
what else?
You talked about her environmental efforts, the things that she did. And interestingly enough, you named 3 very different types of engagement. I mean, just broadly speaking, you talked first about this idea of the way that she held her grandson, the way that you've got the movement involved, you've got something to focus on. There is purpose and meaning every time you hold a child. A different type of engagement when you pet an animal. So we think about that in terms of there could be, it's a tactile thing as Teepa's showing us, there's a movement piece. It may be for some people, it may actually be fun and leisure, but for other people, it may be rest and restoration. It may be much more of the sensory experience for her than it is the engagement with an animal. So my guess is you could see whether for her it's one or the other at this point. If you've seen her interact with an animal, do you think it's more of her rest and restoration, or is that her fun?
When you say rest and restoration, I'm sorry, I don't understand what that means.
Yeah, think of rocking in a chair, listening to music without words, maybe taking a walk, depending on how it is you restore yourself and take a deep breath. It could be, if you're a true extrovert, you actually chit chat with other people about brainless things.
I think it would be the rest and restoration then.
Okay.
Because she's not hearing all the words in that movie, but she's watching dancing and activities that she doesn't need to follow a dialogue in order
have to work
to be entertained,
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we're talking about the different types of engagement here. And we know that human beings need all of these. And the other one we actually didn't talk about is actually self-care. We talk about this in terms of the way that all of us spend our day. And when my ability to take that frontal lobe and that changes to be able to figure out how to sequence through my day, I'm having a harder time transitioning to figure out what else I need next. My brain and my ability, we can see this as the language comprehension is a disconnect. We can know that my ability to figure out not only what do I need right now, what's the best thing to fill my needs, but then how to get and do those next things.
Okay, so I'm going to come on in and jump in here now because I've got some thoughts. One is, I'm wondering, you said she sits around most of the day and isn't really engaged. How well do her hands work?
Okay. Like I give her cards, like I tried to play cards with her, and she has a hard time holding all the cards.
How about washing out jars, getting the jars for recycling, emptying, crushing cans for recycling?
I had her peel potatoes. She did that.
Yeah.
She could do that.
Taking the husks off of corn.
Yeah.
Things that are very sensory rich, but they're repetitive. Like you do it over and over and over. Pouring rice into a sock. And then we fill the sock and we make a sock that you have rice in that you can use as a warmer.
Oh, that you put in the microwave.
That you put in the microwave. You tie a knot in it. Things that are very hand, not eye, but hand activities, because I heard holding the baby, stroking the animal. I'm hearing that she likes to see motion and hear rhythm, and not so much talking and trying to figure things out. Really more of a sort of repetitive motion kind of phenomena in the afternoon and more into the evening, because she doesn't have the ability to take in and use data very well. She can't take things in. She's just not absorbing them.
Yeah, that's getting worse.
Yeah, so rubbing on surfaces, like wiping a surface, washing dishes.
Yeah.
Without having to really, I mean, we're not necessarily planning on her getting them sparkly clean.
Oh, no, I've had to, I just, whenever she's wanted to, most of the time now she says no, but that she doesn't want to, but I would let her wash them. And then I just go back and rewash them after she went to bed.
This is where asking, do you want to, is not where I'd go, Jan.
Oh,
I would say, Mom, I really need your help for 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Really need your help because we want her to get activated. I really could use your help for 5 minutes.
Oh, all right.
The real difficult thing for her to do when she's getting tired in the evening, even though she hasn't done much, is initiate. She can't get started. So do you want to? No. Would you like to? No. How about we? No.
She's always so tired.
I'm too tired. I know you're really tired. I could really use your help for 5 minutes. I just need your help for 5 minutes.
Should I allow, is it okay at this stage, because she is 97 after all.
She sure enough is.
Should I allow her to sleep as much as she does during the day?
I would say
what
you want to be tuned into is it boredom sleeping or is it fatigue sleeping? Because people rest or sleep. They sleep when they need to recharge a battery. But what you'll also see is they're bored and they don't know what to do.
Well, that's what I think it is. But
they drowse. Yeah. And so what I might try is I would feed off of Hello, Dolly, and I would think of other musicals that have a similar kind of energy to them. So for me, Music Man is right on up there.
Okay.
Music Man is another one that's really right on that genre.
Okay.
76 trombone parade, 110 cornets, and but that kind of thing. And then My Fair Lady.
Oh yes, we watched that. And Funny Girl.
Funny Girl. So looking at some other musicals and just the musical part, skip the whole thing and just cut to the musicals.
Yeah. Oh, you mean through the drama part of the,
Yeah,
Dialogue,
just
you
hit
mean.
the songs, hit the right before the
Okay.
songs.
All right.
So that she has little snapshots. You're doing snapshots rather than the entire video.
Oh, I see. I see.
And
Okay.
pick the upbeat songs. Or if you want, if you're going for a slowing it down, looking at those slower pieces, but really looking for how do you want to change her mood and engage her with those.
Right, right. Because then when she starts getting angry, then and I know it's because she's frustrated.
She is.
But and it comes out in anger, but she's thinking of horrible things.
Yeah.
Like, is there somebody that's going to rob our house?
You're worried about somebody coming in.
Oh my God. I mean, it goes on and on. I just think, where is she getting these thoughts? Are so terrible.
All her fears, all the bad energy. And so, hey, mom. Ooh, hey, mom. And when I do that, as soon as I do hey, Jan.
Yeah, you stop and listen.
You do. You are trying to what comes next? What? Listen, I need your help. What? Come here. I want to show you something.
Yeah, and it changes the subject.
And it changes the location, the subject. And this is where I might even get one of the animals that vibrates. There are stuffed animals that can vibrate that have some weight to them. And have her have that as a backup creature.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it can offer a lot of comfort to people who have that anxiety thing. It's the stroking, it's the vibration that the animal does, almost like for cats, it would be purring, but for dogs, it's just the vibration. And it's quite calming to many, many people who are really struggling at that time of day. They just need something that's not going to be moving around on its own. Some people really do love animals at that point, but the animal is having a hard time settling because the person is having a hard time settling.
Yeah.
And different animals respond differently. And so, it's just something to think about. So give those things a try and let us know.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No, it was a really good question. It's right on the money too. Yeah.
I know a lot of people, Teepa, Jan, this is such a great one, have a hard time when they listen to you, they think, wow, she's so creative. And so for many of us, I've got to go about my day, giving myself a day where I think, what am I physically doing? Is there some basic motion that I'm doing that someone else could do? And so as I'm pulling on my socks, I'm looking at my environment. I just spend my day seeing how I've spent my day. And then I can come up. I have such a hard time just coming up with those initial things until I'm in this motion and thinking about it as a professional. But as a care partner, I'm just not there. I've got to actually look, what is I'm doing? And you came up with the peeling potatoes. And my guess is, there was a moment when you were peeling potatoes, well, I bet your mom might be able to do this.
Scrubbing the potatoes, if not peeling.
Yeah, no, she did a good job. I mean, it was fine. Also, I can't get any help in here. I've had nine different caretakers. She fires them all.
Oh man.
Because nobody is allowed in the house. They're all stealing. They're all
Yikes.
So it's back to me.
At 98, you really are fighting an uphill battle there. I mean, senses are getting.
So I know it is what it is. And, I'm okay with it. I mean, she's worried about us all our lives. It's my turn. And I just, she deserves it. You know?
And it sounds like you've got that worked out in your head. So congratulations. Good for you. Thanks, Jan.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Rachel, what have we got next?
Teepa, actually, it's funny that Jan had that question because several other people had asked semi-similar questions, but there was one from somebody who said that she has a resident who has stumped her. He was diagnosed as having Alzheimer's, but doesn't have the typical characteristics of Alzheimer's. He's fairly young, at 67, has severe visual perception issues, and any activity offered is either too childish, not of interest, or he can't participate due to the vision impairment. His past interests were motocross racing. Music irritates. TV and videos of racing are not interesting. He does enjoy current events when she's talking with him. Sudden noises and other residents talking and yelling irritates him. So she wondered if you had any ideas.
I'll introduce him to my mother.
This may not be the positive relationship we're looking for, all things considered.
Oh, God.
Ay. All right. So one of the things I want to bring up. So Beth and our team have been doing a fairly significant amount of work trying to help sort of sort through these kinds of atypical dementias and that idea of how many dementias are there? And the answer is quite a few. So one of the things I'm going to do is show you a kind of dementia that right off the top, when I heard this, I thought, wow, this sort of reminds me of that kind of dementia. So it's called posterior cortical atrophy. It's also known as Benson's disease. And what happens is the changes that they're associated with some of the same kind of abnormal protein that Alzheimer is, but it starts in the back of the brain, the occipital lobe, and tends to move more forward. And so what it has is a lot of visual disturbances and a lot of occipital wiring into sensory motor disturbances. And there can either be a fairly quick, rapid progression that affects the limbic and the emotional distress system, the fear, the anger, the hide, the flight, the overwhelmed by sensory data and not being able to handle a lot, but also being very challenged by trying to do very much that involves any kind of vision. And so it's a somewhat different dementia. And that's what you're sort of describing is something like that. So it's not progressive supranuclear palsy, which is a different one. But it is one of these dementias that's in the unusual category. And so it does tend to happen for younger people. It can happen to older people, but it is a younger person's dementia as well. And it does rob the person of not just the visual, but the visual motor connections. So being able to figure things out motor-wise from the visual stuff is making it really awkward and uncomfortable. And so lots of irritability frequently with tasks, but interested in talking about things, but then not being able to follow through and engage actively in much. So it's a devastating condition in many ways because you can't make use of your skill sets. And it does feel like that's stupid. I know how to do that, but then I can't do it. Or things that I would have enjoyed doing, I now no longer have the visual motor integration to handle. And it's that complex tasks, I can't get my eyes and my hands to work together. And if I try to close my eyes, then I lose the task too, because I have to see to do the task. But if and so it's incredibly overwhelming. Lynn, you're nodding. Do you want to say anything, or are you just listening in?
I could just feel that frustration. Yeah.
So it's the frustration of knowing you should be able to and not being able to get yourself to do it. And so you think, okay, well, I'll just close my eyes and then I'll be able to figure it out. But then when you close your eyes, you totally lose what it was you were doing. And you feel stupid, but you know you aren't. And so you stop wanting to try to do things because it's a brain buster. And you feel it's immobilizing. I mean, it's emotionally distressing, but it's physically in many ways immobilizing. Yeah. And so it's a miserable situation to be in, because the thing that you should sustain to some extent is your fine motor skill set, and you don't have it. And you can't get it to work because of the changes in the occipital moving forward. And it's that posterior cortical. And some people go through the disease really pretty quickly, and other people, it can be an incredibly slow progression pattern, which is really, it's a tough space to be in for a long period of time. And if you were going to be there, you want it to be a short window of time. You don't want to be dragging through this for most people. So it's a very difficult one. Yeah, Beth.
Yeah, I was curious about when she mentioned the joy with motocross, and I found that one very interesting, considering when I've seen people with this particular, it's actually, some people think it's actually a type of Alzheimer's disease, but it also can be a type of Lewy body, depending on how it sort of manifests. But when I see it associated with Alzheimer's disease, I see people getting frustrated with others in a larger room because of that ability to judge distance. So if someone is going to come at me, I can't recognize who they are, figure out what they're trying to do, and then how fast judging that distance. So everything is fast and annoying, and and then I'm aware. And one of the gentlemen that I worked with, he actually was also interested in car racing. And we found that we could talk about it, but only if we started to watch, and then there was a minute there was any frustration, and we would turn it off. So there was a visual component that got the memory going. And so it makes sense to me why she's talking about the engaging verbally, but it sounds like she's looking for other types of engagement. Whew.
Yeah, and it is tricky because you can't watch things. I mean, this is a guy that might have liked to watch or do. So I did have somebody who enjoyed sitting in an automobile seat with a steering wheel. Now, this guy was a motorcycle, but this gentleman really enjoyed his time there. And we set it up with a gear shift. I mean, it was just the setup. It wasn't really hooked in, but he felt in control there. And he felt skillful there, even though he wasn't going anywhere. It was the sensory experience of remembering and being able to do things with your foot and your hand automatically, because there was almost no fine motor. If you think about it, it's all gross motor. And so it was all sort of something that is a continuous movement, or you can do it and you foot on, foot off. And it was something that he felt, and we took him. And so it was a setup that we had outside. So it wasn't a place where he spent a lot of time with other people. And he didn't really enjoy being with people that much. That would be the challenge. It was too much when he was in groups. So one-on-ones were pretty much the most I've ever been very successful with people who have post-cortical atrophy, maybe 1-on-2, but not that much, and not any of the more traditional activities that people tend to think of. Anybody else have some thoughts? Rachel, any ideas on your side of the street as you're thinking about that?
Yeah, so I was wondering if you would focus more on hearing, and maybe how would they tolerate touch?
It varies a lot by person in my experience, but you have to really give verbal information about what's about to happen. And it can't be long drawn out exploration. It's, I have my hand palm up. If you'll put your hand on it. Okay, good. Now I'm going to see, how about holding hands? All right. Now, if you'll lean forward, okay, I'm going to stay here and I want you to push up. So it's giving single step. Okay, great. Now, and using a guiding arm with hand under hand, I did find tends to be using a guide assist rather than trying to tell people what you're going to do moving once you're up and moving, because it gets complicated. But traveling, not doing a lot of talking while traveling, because it takes a lot to travel. So not giving a lot of verbal information on traveling, other than we're going down to the end of the hall. And then travel. We're getting close to the end. We're going to turn right. And then having previously just started that little rotation with the forearm to signal which way we're turning. So it's a simplified sort of guiding motion rather than a tugging or pulling, or I need you to turn. Okay, we're going to go in this doorway. Okay, the doorway's to your right. Now I want you to know, turn your feet. There you go. All right, now if you reach with your right hand and you reach out pretty much at arm's length, you will find the edge of the door. Do you feel the edge of the door? The edge of the door is right there. Have you got the edge of the door? Okay, now take 3 steps forward. Can you take 3 steps? I mean, which for people visually impaired, people sometimes think verbal diarrhea is the way to go. And it's just really, whoa. So working on deepened voice, limited verbalizations at a time with pauses. So that's sort of one of those phenomena. So look at the information, and it is out there. Sometimes you have to look under Benson's, or you want to look under posterior cortical atrophy, PCA. That might be helpful in this particular case, because what you're describing sounds like that. It might not be. There might be something else that's going on, but that's my best guess from the information that you shared. But it's a good call. I mean, it is an unusual dementia, but not as rare as we thought it was. We do have, I mean, numbers of people who have it, but it's the tricky part is it was named after the physician, Benson, but then we understood what it is. It's posterior cortical atrophy, which describes its pattern. And then where it goes next is one of a couple patterns. So
Teepa, Gretchen was asking a question about someone that she's been trying to help. So she's wondering if you've had any experience with people living with dementia and alcohol use.
Oh, did you see my slide? Did you see my slide? Were you glancing at that slide there just real quickly that I kicked up? I'll let you see it again, because I promise I'll be nice and share. So alcohol-related dementia, the older terms are Wernicke's or Korsakoff syndrome. And we used to, I mean, there's a variety, but what we think is going on is we've got neurotoxicity and potential of vitamin B1 and thiamine deficiencies. The tricky part is when you've done this for so long with some binge elements in it, do we have a situation that is progressive, or do we have a situation that if you stabilize it will stop? And there's debate right now in the international community about whether alcohol-related conditions that have been in progress since adolescence, for instance, should be in the dementia category, or if there is a possibility of halting it and not having it continue to progress forward. And the answer is we don't have the answer right now. So what we know are some of the very common symptoms in this category are really limited ability to learn anything new. Old things are pretty good, but new things, that's when you'll see the situation fall apart and the person become acutely distressed, and often, shut up, you don't, and often with a very strong emotional reaction, or a very, you just want me to fail, you want me to have, and so, whoa, wait, no, I wasn't, you're changing everything, you're just trying to trick me. A sense of being attacked or persecuted or being very angry are two very common reactions to the symptom of not being able to learn new when we have alcohol by history. A decreased interest in things that I've always valued, or people, or a life thing that I've always enjoyed. I'm not. I could care less now. I'm just, and it's often mistake for depression. And it's probably related to depression, but it's actually a symptom of the neurotoxicity, of the damage to the brain areas. And so before it was driven by the alcohol, and now it's driven by the brain failure. So I can't care. I'm apathetic. And one of the really hallmarks of this is the apathy. I don't care. And I can't care. Whereas before there was an element of maybe coming out of it. This is hard. Impaired judgment and decision-making, emotional lability combined with apathy. So it's the combination of lability with apathy. which is really frustrating because it's like you get one and then you get the other and it's like, whoa, wait a minute. And then the other one that really comes in and can actually be a situation where you have falls, but it's balance and coordination. It's the central axial skeleton not being able to find gravity all the time. The inability to get the coordination, the finer details of coordination. So you see an apraxia or ataxia, lots of social control issues, and initiation and termination issues. Those are some of the hallmarks of it. Anybody else want to chime in or kick in on this one? I find history gets in the way here too, because there's usually a lot of history coming into play. Yeah.
So that was really helpful. Thank you. My kind of next question to that is my patient was kind of kicked out, discharged from inpatient treatment because he couldn't comprehend any of the auditory or reading material needed to go through the 12-step program. Mm-hmm. And so how is this poor man expected to work on his disease in the midst of his dementia?
Yeah. So unless we can work on environmental shifts that offer the kind of support, and it's hard work for whoever's going to be in the environment, because the old habitual patterns really thrust themselves forward, and it's really difficult to get off the merry-go-round. Mm-hmm. And so not having access to alcohol, which for many people was the medication to manage their anxiety as well as their depression. And now they are not supposed to have that. And so what's happening is they don't have thing that their brain tells them that they need. And who's the one who's making this happen? Well, it's not me, you're doing it. And so this cycling through that can get really difficult. So Beth, do you want to take a little stab, or Rachel, do you want to take a little stab at some thoughts? Because we're asking people to do and hold on to things that they were having lots of difficulty doing before they developed dementia.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that the couple of people that I've worked with, they didn't necessarily all have that impulsive, I want what I want when I want it sort of things. It was more, which has like an irritated feel to it, but a bunch of people that I worked with that had a history of severe alcoholism as a disease, and then therefore got dementia later on. It was more along the lines of the apathy without a giving up sort of feel. It was just like an oblivious to it. Mm-hmm. So that idea that I can't learn is different. It's almost like in a different piece. And I think the piece that's really heartening is this idea that our right temporal lobe, our center of emotional memory, stays with us. So while I'm not going to be successful in traditional treatments, I actually really may respond well to cognitive behavioral therapy, because I can have these emotional responses to a therapist who's also looking at maybe Wellbutrin, which has been successful in treating apathy for people even with dementia. But then also checking to make sure we know that Wellbutrin also has some side effects on sexual arousal, and it really diminishes it. So if someone has a life that involves a sexual relationship, we don't want to hurt that. So it's just having somebody very aware and checking with the person if they're in a relationship. But yeah, these environmental controls, I can actually have pretty good judgment in the moment in the conversation to say what I will and will not do for treatment, what you can do to my environment. I have an opinion. I won't remember our conversation, but I'll remember our connection and the fact that you listened to me. So I find that for people with dementia, whether it's for alcohol treatment or bereavement or whatever, I'm actually will show progress over time with behavioral cognitive intervention. Whereas if you ask me to go to a 12-step program that involves reciting things and reading things and writing things down and charting my thoughts, I'm not going to do that. You look at a writing sample of mine 15 years ago and you'll be able to read it. You can't read my writing now. It's this idea that I'm going to try to involve this left temporal language part of the brain that is not only damaged by dementia, but it's damaged by my sequencing and all the other things you're expecting me to do, I have this. I have an emotional memory and I can learn. It's just going to look different.
And potentially facial recognition and picking up on facial expressions.
Yeah, we tested him today, and I think he's at least an emerald.
Yeah,
Probably going into amber.
yeah. So it's
Um,
got to be a sensory rich program that he can benefit from. What can he still find any pleasure in doing, but expecting him to be able to ask forgiveness from people, and those kinds of goals are beyond where he could be, but he could potentially be able to adapt to some new sensory routines
Oral.
that would offer him satisfaction and keep him satisfied to a point where he's not craving or seeking or getting himself in trouble as much.
and the other hurdle is he has absolutely no awareness of both his alcohol problem and his dementia.
And he's not likely to develop it because at this point, the amount of damage to the prefrontal cortex is fairly extreme. The wiring is probably pretty challenging. That white matter disease is fairly typically significant with extreme alcohol use over periods of time. The ability to initiate, to sequence, the ability to have that self-reflection, the ability to see other people's perspectives and to really appreciate those perspectives. I mean, that's often what the inability to do it well is what often triggers the use of alcohol, because I don't know what the hell you're pissed at. I'm just going to make the pain go away or the discomfort go away. I'll have something to drink. And sure enough, it does. I don't feel any of that anymore. And so I've gotten to a place where it's hard for me to recognize, what the hell am I supposed to do when you're upset? I don't know what to do. I didn't do anything. Why are you upset? And it's, God.
Yeah, his wife, he just thinks his wife is out to get him.
Yeah. And so I will say that in my experience, one of the biggest challenges is old wounds come back in Technicolor when it comes to adding dementia on top of a history of alcohol use without resolution. And then when you add anosognosia, the inability to be self-aware on it, it's not a combo that families often are able to resolve, because they want to have the talk and the understanding and the appreciation that what we did for those years and how you did that was not okay. And that's not really going to be an option. And
but old routines should be okay, right?
Yep. Old routines will work. And what we have to find out is the ones that triggered some of the anxiety or depression that led to the use of the alcohol. Because what you will see now often is eating in substitution. Or seeking in sensory experiences that are extreme. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that lack of awareness is probably a bigger issue for the people that are involved in the treatment. It's that recognition I've got to as an aggression. I'm not feeling it from you. This is somebody that doesn't understand. Everybody else around him and his treatment team has got to let it go, because it's not part of his world anymore.
Yeah, because they tried an intervention. Yeah, the
He's
family
like,
tried an
everybody.
intervention.
And he felt bad, I bet, too, at that moment, and then it was gone.
But now they're going to know tomorrow from us that he has dementia.
Yeah.
And they didn't know that before. So we'll be able to educate his circles of people.
Yeah, because it's not asking him to do what he now cannot do on top of what he already had trouble doing. It's not going to serve anybody well. Everybody's going to get incredibly frustrated.
Yeah, we have to change expectations.
Work on breathing when we have those moments and going, okay, so he's not going to say that. And it's like, no, he's not. So what are we working toward? What's our goal?
Yeah.
Good question though, Gretchen. Great.
Really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Absolutely. Thanks for being there for him. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So Teepa, a question came in from someone on YouTube, and they said NPH, which I'm assuming is normal pressure hydrocephalus. So they're wondering if you have some thoughts on the normal pressure hydrocephalus and crossover of mental illness. So they're having trouble discerning between the two with the behaviors and the delusions and the anger and all that.
Okay, so one of the things that that about 15 years ago was a very big thought was that with what is called normal pressure hydrocephalus, typically in the human brain, there's fluid that fills the empty spaces, the ventricles. And with normal life, what happens is the fluid fills those ventricles and it goes, there's space in your spinal cord and it's all cerebral spinal fluid. And what happens is there's a pressure gradient. And what you do is you lose the fluid. It goes away, it disappears. It's basically waste treatment for your brain. And it's dissipated. And you maintain a pressure balance in your brain so that the pressure of the fluid in those spaces is not more than you can tolerate. Well, with some people, what the thought was the enlarging of the ventricles was because it was like somebody was blowing up the balloon. The dissipation wasn't happening. And so the fluid would fill those areas and start expanding those areas, and it would push on your brain. And when it did that, that isn't it happens over time, but what would happen is that your brain tissue would die because it's being pushed against the outsides of your skull, the inside of your skull, because that pressure is pushing out. And so there was actually an experiment that if we did surgically went in and put drains, so they would put drains in that would drain that fluid off down into the perineal area, which they do for if anybody has hydrocephalus, like children are born with hydrocephalus, that's what they'll do. And they get rid of the extra pressure and then the ventricles don't enlarge. Okay, so one of the three symptoms of normal pressure hydrocephalus, you've got to pick up on them. You want to pick up on them really quick if they're happening, is acute confusion. So like, whoa, really fast it comes on. And so it tends to be hyper arousal, hypo alertness, disorientation, sudden disorientation, acute, so it's sort of like, whoa, is she having a stroke? Is she having what is going on? Where she's acutely, cognitively very different. Loss of control of bowel and bladder that comes on pretty suddenly. It's like not just my bladder, but my bowel too. And I'm having trouble controlling my bowel and my bladder all at the same time. And I have a gait, and the gait is really consistent with, it's like my feet are stuck in cement and I'm having to try to lift my foot and shift it forward. And it's just like slogging through cement or quicksand. And those are extreme expressions of these initial symptoms. And so they thought at first, well, that's what was causing a lot of dementia. So they did these shunts and they did this work. And what they found out is, oh, actually, that wasn't the problem for these people. They didn't have normal pressure hydrocephalus. That really wasn't what was going on. And so they had to stop the study because people were progressing more rapidly in their dementia because we would put them under anesthesia in order to put the shunt in. It was like, oh no. And so we were causing the problem to sort of go faster rather than get better. And they stopped the study. But there is normal pressure hydrocephalus, which is if it goes a slower pace as opposed to that rapid that everybody notices right away. What can happen is it can put the pressure on the brain, put the pressure on the brain, put the pressure on. By the time we realize it, there's a lot of brain tissue that's been killed because it was a gradual progression of it. In this case, what we're seeing, it sounds like, is that there's also an underlying potential mental health issue, a mental illness going on, a history of maybe schizophrenia or bipolar disease or mania, or a depression or something else happening. So we have We did have normal pressure hydrocephalus, which was treated with a shunt. The problem for older adults with normal pressure hydrocephalus, as opposed to young people with normal pressure hydrocephalus, is the shunt frequently has more failures, it has more problems, and so you can have pressure buildup again. So it's this constant, is it the pressure from the shunt? It's just not working as well as we need it. Do we need to monitor pressure again? Often some of the initial testing that you might see in some of the tertiary set, like the higher curiosity centers, is they'll do another lumbar puncture, which means they go into the spine and they will pull off fluid to see if that makes you brighter and clearer and have fewer symptoms. If you have that, then it probably means it's more along the line of the changes to the fluid balance in the brain. If, however, the person has psychiatric issues to start with, what we probably have is we have the normal pressure hydrocephalus, which we're trying to manage. We have the bipolar, which we're trying to manage. And then guess what's peeking in? Dementia. I've got a third player. And so it's not the normal pressure hydrocephalus that you are managing. It's not the bipolar that you have historically been able to manage, but now you've got a third party member, which is either a vascular changes that are happening due to all the other stuff that's going on in the brain, or Alzheimer's or another form of dementia that's starting to cook. And it's coming up with the shunts and the psychiatric illness, and we've just added the dementia into the cooking pot. And so it is this triangle of trying to figure out what to do to support. And the fact that she is really fearful about going back is, my best is she does not see what she's gotten from medical providers as helpful. Bad things happen when you go to medical providers. And so she is really not thinking that going again is something of interest to her or would be helpful to her. It's scary, it's frightening. And so trying to figure out how to manage this without putting her through more things that she would view as not helpful, and in fact would probably escalate some of the symptoms, is going to be, you will want support from somewhere. So if you haven't done a consult with us to see if we can sort things out a little more in depth, it seems like it might be well worth a deeper conversation first before you try to figure out where to try to push. Because the harder you push, the more she'll push back and the more often the symptoms will escalate. No, not necessarily. The dementia may not be from the normal pressure hydrocephalus. You may have managed the normal pressure as well as it can be managed. The pressure is normalized. But what she has is a dementia on top of that and not caused by it. Because you might have caught it well within the range of being able to manage the pressure. But there's something else going on. So it could be, if it went on for quite some time, but if it was relatively short, it's possible you have another dementia cooking.
I love this conversation of looking at sussing out the difference, because I know that this is one of the ones that, because the shunt makes such a marked difference in gait, we have our providers that are just trying to help will sometimes get really excited and really they see a huge difference in, like you talk about that shuffle gait, the feet never leave the floor. There's a slight forward posture. And very unsteady, like someone suddenly, like the whole floor rocked and then they stopped moving. And then with the post-surgery, they're walking down the steps there and back. I mean, their turnaround isn't totally steady like some 30-year-old, and so we think, there we go. And why not do it again? Because it looks so good, but is it good for that person? And I think that's where our advocacy piece and the questions that this person's asking are so beautifully critical, and how you outline that, Teepa.
Yeah, because it's not going to be the fix that we often want it to be. It's not magic. It's one tool in the inventory, and people can start thinking, well, that'll do it. And it's like, it gets really messy. And I wish it weren't, but it's incredibly messy. So, all right, Rachel, I know we haven't gotten to everybody. What do we got? We got 2 minutes. What do we got?
I have a thought. Nadine had a question. I think we kind of tie a lot of this together because you talked about different dementias. And I think Nadine had a question about, so is it important to find out what kind of dementia somebody has? Because a lot of people are saying, well, why bother? Why put them through all this trouble? I mean, if you can't really fix it anyway, what's the point?
Yeah, so it gets a little tricky. The answer to it really is it depends. But what I would say is I like to know what the person still has available to them and what is challenging. I particularly want to know if somebody might have what's called frontal temporal dementia by any chance, because one of the really important things to know is those folks as a rule are not missing acetylcholine at the same level as other folks. So if you try to give them medications that are classically used in most dementias, they actually cause counter effects in those folks and can make their lives absolutely miserable. And on the other hand, for somebody who has an frontal temporal dementia, we may need to look at using medications we might not think about for other dementias because of the changes in the places that we're having the tau protein problems. Lewy body is really important to recognize because we do not want to be treating what they have as a psychiatric condition when what it is it's their Lewy body symptoms, and sending them and trying to treat every hallucination with a medication that we would use in schizophrenia is a really bad idea. And treating delusions that are not life-threatening or threatening to the well-being of others is not necessarily the route we want to go either. So a lot of it is fine-tuning, but some of it is just basic awareness of what areas should I be emphasizing with somebody because they still have ability to do it. Where are there areas I should be providing more support, because that's where the flaw in the system is. That's where we've got to be tuned in a little bit more. Comprehension of language, but they have great visual cueing versus the person who has posterior cortical atrophy. They can't use visual cues. So now I've got to look at my verbal cueing, and I want to plan for progression, which means, boy, do I have to figure out how we're going to fill time, because I'm losing a lot of those aspects that I would have used otherwise. So for me, it often is, what symptom profile am I seeing? Whether it turns out that they actually carried the diagnosis. I don't really care and often whether they carry the diagnosis, except with Lewy body. I do there because half of everybody with Lewy body has hypersensitivity to meds, particularly at risk for antipsychotics. So haloperidol, risperidone, and quintiapine are meds that you really want to go, ooh, hang on, let's double check this before we jump on that bandwagon. Just because they have a black box warning around them, and they are a warning signal. So knowing whether you might be looking at some Lewy body involvement, it is one of those questions I like to ask, because it's like, let's be cautious. Let's err on the side of not causing harm, which is one of those agreements we take when we say we are going to be health providers. First, cause no harm. And it really is important to note what are some of the symptoms that we're looking at, because I first of all, don't want to try to cause harm. And that gets tricky if we don't know the kind of dementia, when we are getting really skilled at noticing so many different ones. And it doesn't necessarily require a whole taking of forever to figure it out, to sort of look at symptoms at least. So yeah, that's my take on it. All right, well, we have spent an hour and a half with you guys. Thank you so much for coming and being part of this. If we did not get to one of your questions, we will do our very best to do it on Teepa for 10 in the morning, live at 5, or we will get back with you and see if there's another way we can get to your questions, because we do try our very best, but sometimes it takes us longer to answer them than we hope. So Carrie, anything you want to add in?
I'm going to play our outro, and thank you all for joining us. So,
ooh, and we'll be back in 2 weeks for the problem solving with the team. And we have already a couple of good good situations. But if you have a situation, you want some problem solving with us, come on back and we will see us then in 2 weeks. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Good luck
Thanks,
to everybody.
You
Okay.
too.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Teepa Snow, and you just found our YouTube channel and watched one of our videos. I'm the owner and founder of Positive Approach to Care. Thanks for watching. And if you liked, if you have a comment about, or you would, please share it with people you know. Oh, and if you haven't yet done it, consider subscribing. We'll let you know when the next new video comes out. And you might want to visit our website, www.teepasnow.com, where you'll find other resources as well. See you there.
Who was that woman?